The old Zephyrian sat in the metal chair, his 4 arms resting on the table. His skin looked like broken glass, covered in scars that glowed faintly in the dim light. Commander Vexthai had not spoken about the war for 50 years. Today, that would change. Across from him sat a young female Zephyrian named Cathara. She was small, and her skin was smooth, unmarked by battle. In her hands, she held a recording device. Her job was to collect stories from old soldiers for the history books. Most veterans told boring tales of honor and glory. Vexthai knew his story would be different. "Commander, thank you for agreeing to this interview," Cathara said softly. Her voice was respectful but curious. "The archive needs first-hand accounts of the human war. Your service record shows you fought in every major battle." Vexthai looked out the small window at the distant stars. 50 years had passed since the war ended, but he could still see the burning ships in his mind. He could still hear the screams of his fellow soldiers. Most of all, he could still remember the humans and their terrible determination to be free. "You want to know about the humans," he said finally. His voice was rough from years of silence. "You think it will be like the other wars we fought. Tales of brave Zephyrian warriors defeating primitive aliens." Cathara nodded eagerly. She had read about the great Zephyrian Empire in school. They had conquered 200 star systems. They had the best ships, the strongest weapons, the most disciplined armies in the galaxy. Every species they met either joined the Empire willingly or was forced to submit. "The humans were supposed to be easy," Vexthai continued. "Just another small species on a single world. Our scouts told us they had barely learned to travel between stars. They had no empire, no great fleets, no advanced weapons. High Command said we would conquer them in weeks." The old warrior's crystalline skin darkened, a sign of deep emotion. "Among his people, we were fools. We understood nothing about humans. Nothing at all." Cathara leaned forward. This was not what she expected to hear. "But surely our superior technology gave us every advantage?" "Technology?" Vexthai laughed bitterly. "Yes, we had better ships, better guns, better armor. We had fought wars for thousands of years. We knew every strategy, every tactic, every honorable way to wage battle. The humans threw all of that away." He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, transport ships moved between the buildings of the Zephyrian colony. Life was peaceful now. It had been peaceful for 50 years. All because of what the humans taught them. "I was a young officer then," he said, "full of pride in our mighty empire. I commanded a battle cruiser called the Storm of Victory. We were part of the 3rd Battle Fleet under Admiral Quinder. 200 ships, the finest in the galaxy. We thought we were going to a parade, not a war." Cathara's recording device captured every word. She had interviewed dozens of veterans, but none had spoken like this. None had sounded so troubled by their memories. "Tell me about first contact," she said. "When did you first see the humans?" Vexthai closed his eyes. He was back there again, 50 years in the past, watching the blue world grow larger on his ship's screens. Earth looked so small and peaceful. A single planet with a single moon. No orbital fortresses, no massive defense fleets. It seemed helpless. "We sent the usual message," he said. "Surrender and join the Empire, or be conquered." Every species we had met chose one or the other. The humans did neither. What did they do? "They asked us to leave." Vexthai's voice carried a note of amazement even after all these years. "A single message from their planet. Please go away. We don't want trouble," as if we were lost travelers asking for directions. Cathara frowned. This made no sense to her. "When the mighty Zephyrian fleet appeared in your system, you either surrendered or prepared to fight. You did not ask them to leave. Admiral Quinder was insulted, Vexthai continued. He ordered the fleet to move closer to their planet. We would show them our power, and they would submit. That is how it always worked. But it didn't work with the humans? No. Instead, their ships came out to meet us. Tiny things compared to our dreadnoughts. I counted maybe 50 vessels. Some looked like cargo ships with weapons bolted on. Others were so small, I wasn't sure they were real warships at all. The old commander sat back down. His scarred hands gripped the edge of the table. We should have known then. Any sensible species would have kept their ships close to their planet. They would have tried to make us fight through their defenses. The humans came straight at us. That sounds like a tactical error, Cathara said. She had studied military history. Attacking a superior force in open space was considered suicide. We thought so too. Admiral Quinder laughed when he saw them coming. He said it would be over in minutes. He ordered us to destroy them quickly so we could land and begin the occupation. Vexthai's skin began to glow brighter. The scars on his arms pulsed with old pain. The humans had a leader, a female named Kate Morrison. She commanded their biggest ship, something called the Defiant. It was maybe 1/10 the size of our flagship. Did she try to negotiate? No, she sent us one message, just 4 words. Come and take it. Cathara didn't understand. Take what? Our freedom, I think. Or maybe our planet. We learned later that those words meant something special to humans. They said them whenever someone tried to take something they valued. It was both a challenge and a promise. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the recording device. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the colony. Vexthai looked older in the fading light. What happened next? Cathara asked. We learned our first lesson about humans, Vexthai said quietly. They don't fight the way everyone else fights. They don't follow the rules. They don't care about honor or tradition or proper military conduct. They care about one thing, winning. But winning is what war is about. No, young one, war is about many things. Honor, territory, resources, political goals. Sometimes winning is just one part of a larger plan, but humans see it differently. For them, winning is everything. Losing is not acceptable under any circumstances. Vexthai stood again and walked to a cabinet. He pulled out an old data pad, its surface scratched and worn. I kept records during the war, notes about what I saw, what I learned. I want you to understand what we faced. He activated the device, and a mice hologram appeared. It showed a star map with ship positions marked in different colors. Blue for humans, red for Zephyrians. This was the first battle. Look at how they move their ships. No formation, no strategy we could recognize. They seemed to be attacking randomly, but they weren't. The hologram showed the human ships spreading out, moving in different directions at different speeds. Some headed straight for the Zephyrian fleet. Others curved around to the sides. A few actually moved away from the battle. Admiral Quinder ordered a standard engagement. We formed our battle line and prepared to destroy them ship by ship. It should have been simple. It should have been easy. The hologram continued to play. The Zephyrian ships moved into perfect formation, a tactic they had used successfully for centuries. The human ships kept moving in their chaotic pattern. Then, the humans showed us what chaos could do to order, Vexthai said, and we began to understand that we had made a terrible mistake. The hologram flickered as Vexthai touched the controls. The blue dots representing human ships moved closer to the red Zephyrian formation. Cathara watched carefully, trying to understand what made this battle different from all the others. She had studied. Admiral Quinder gave the order to fire, Vexthai said. Our weapons were superior in every way. Longer range, more power, better targeting systems. The first salvo should have destroyed half their fleet. The hologram showed bright lines reaching out from the Zephyrian ships toward the humans. Most missed their targets completely. The human ships were moving too fast and changing direction too often for the Zephyrian computers to track properly. They were flying like madmen, Vexthai continued. No pilot in the galaxy flies like that. It should have been impossible to control a ship making such wild turns and sudden stops. But somehow they did it. Were they better pilots than our people? Cathara asked. Not better. Different. Our pilots trained for years to fly in perfect formation. Every movement was planned and practiced. The humans seemed to make it up as they went along. Their ships would suddenly dive down or spin sideways or do things that made no tactical sense. Vexthai touched the hologram again. One of the human ships, smaller than the others, began moving in a strange pattern. It flew straight at the largest Zephyrian dreadnought, and at the last second veered away. And it came back and did the same thing again. That ship was commanded by a human named Joe Martinez. He kept attacking my flagship over and over. We could not hit him because he never did the same thing twice. But he was too small to hurt us with his weapons. I thought he was just trying to distract us. What was he really doing? Learning. Every time he attacked, he got a little closer. He was studying our defenses, finding weak spots, watching how we responded. We thought he was being foolish. He was being smart. The old warrior's skin grew darker. The memory still troubled him after all these years. Then Kate Morrison, their leader, did something that changed everything. She sent a message to all human ships. Just 2 words. Protocol 7. What did that mean? We found out later it was not a real military code. The humans made it up during the battle. It meant, do whatever you think will work. Every human captain was free to fight however they wanted. Cathara frowned. This violated every principle of military command she had learned. But without coordination, they should have been defeated easily. That is what we thought. But the humans were not trying to coordinate. They were trying to confuse us. And it worked. The hologram showed what happened next. The human ships suddenly scattered in all directions. Some attacked from the front, others from the sides. A few small fighters actually flew underneath the Zephyrian fleet where the big guns could not reach them. Our formation began to break apart, Vexthai said. We were designed to fight other organized fleets. When the enemy has no organization, our tactics become useless. We started shooting at targets that were not where our computers said they should be. Then Martinez made his move. Yes, while we were distracted by all the chaos, he flew his ship straight into our biggest gun. Not at it, into it. He rammed his entire vessel into the weapon system. The hologram showed the small human ship disappearing in a bright flash. When the light faded, the main gun of the Zephyrian flagship was gone. He killed himself to destroy one weapon? Cathara could not understand this. It seemed wasteful and pointless. One very important weapon. The gun he destroyed was our primary bombardment cannon. It was designed to attack planets from orbit. Without it, we could not threaten Earth directly. Martinez knew this. He sacrificed his life and his crew to protect his homeworld. Vexthai sat down heavily. The hologram continued to play, showing more human ships making similar attacks. After Martinez, others followed his example. Lisa Brooks, a young pilot barely out of training, led 6 fighters in a suicide run against our command ship. She was so young, maybe 20 years old. Did she succeed? She damaged our communications array before her ship was destroyed. Suddenly, Admiral Kunder could not talk to half the fleet. Ships were receiving conflicting orders, or no orders at all. The battle was becoming clear to Cathara now. The humans were not trying to win in the traditional sense. They were trying to break the Zephyrian ability to fight as a coordinated force. But surely our superior numbers would win in the end? She asked. That is what Admiral Kinder thought. He ordered all ships to focus fire on the human flagship, the Defiant. If we could kill their leader, the rest would surrender. The hologram showed dozens of Zephyrian ships, turning their weapons toward the single human vessel. Kate Morrison's ship was surrounded and outnumbered 50-1. She should have retreated, Vexthai said. Any reasonable commander would have. Pulled back to fight another day. Instead, Morrison ordered her ship forward, directly toward our flagship. Another suicide attack? We thought so, but the humans were full of surprises. As the Defiant charged toward us, other human ships began, doing something we had never seen before. Vexthai manipulated the hologram to show the human ships changing formation. But instead of spreading out, they began moving closer together. They formed a protective wall around their flagship. Every shot we fired at Morrison had to go through one of the other ships first. They were using their own vessels as shields. That is insane, Cathara said. They were sacrificing themselves for one ship, not for one ship, for one person. Kate Morrison was more than their commander. She was their symbol. As long as she was alive and fighting, the other humans would not give up. The hologram showed the desperate running battle that followed. Human ships threw themselves into the path of Zephyrian weapons. Some were destroyed instantly. Others managed to absorb the hits and keep fighting. Paul Stevens was an engineer on a mining ship called the Hard Worker. His vessel had no weapons except industrial cutting tools. But when a Zephyrian cruiser tried to attack the Defiant, Stevens rammed his ship into its engines. Another suicide attack? No. Stevens and his crew survived. But they disabled a ship 10 times their size, using nothing but a mining laser and pure determination. The cruiser had to withdraw from the battle. Vexthai touched the hologram again. The display showed the final moments of the engagement. The human fleet was down to less than 20 ships, but they were still fighting. Admiral Kinder realized we were in trouble. We had superior weapons and numbers, but we were losing ships faster than the humans. Every time we destroyed one of theirs, they seemed to get more dangerous, not less. How is that possible? Because they learned from every loss. When Martinez sacrificed himself, the other pilots learned his attack method. When Brooks damaged our communications, other humans targeted our command systems. Every human death taught the survivors something new. The old commander stood and walked to the window again. The stars were fully visible now in the dark sky. Somewhere out there was Earth, still free after all these years. The battle ended when we ran out of ammunition before they ran out of ships. We had fired everything we had, but the humans kept coming. Morrison sent us a final message. What did she say? She thanked us for the lesson. She said her people now knew they could fight anyone who tried to take their freedom. Then she offered to let us leave peacefully. Cathara stared at the hologram. The remaining human ships were forming up around the damaged Defiant. They looked ready to continue fighting despite their losses. We retreated, Vexthai said quietly. The mighty Zephyrian Third Fleet, conquerors of 200 worlds, fled from a handful of human ships. It was the beginning of the end of our empire. The recording device continued to hum softly as the old warrior prepared to tell the next part of his story. Outside, the peaceful colony slept, protected by treaties written in human blood and Zephyrian tears. Vexthai turned off the hologram and put the device away. The battle at Earth had been just the beginning. What came next was much worse. He could see that Cathara was struggling to understand how the great Zephyrian fleet could be defeated by such a small force. You think that was the end of the war? he said. One battle, one defeat, and we would go home. But Admiral Quinder was too proud to admit failure. He said the humans had been lucky. Next time would be different. What did he do? He called for reinforcements. The Second and Fourth Fleets were ordered to join us. While we waited for them to arrive, we would establish a base on the human planet called Mars. From there, we could attack Earth directly. Vexthai sat down again. His scarred hands trembled slightly as he remembered what happened on the red planet. Mars seemed like an easy target. It was smaller than Earth and had fewer people. Maybe 50,000 humans lived there in enclosed cities under protective domes. Cathara nodded. She had studied the human colony worlds. Mars was barely habitable and required special technology to maintain life. It should have been simple to conquer. We landed our troops outside the main city. General Morkith led the assault. He had conquered 20 worlds before Mars. The city was called New Boston, and it looked defenseless. No walls, no heavy weapons, just glass domes and metal buildings. The humans surrendered quickly. They did not surrender at all. When our ships landed, every human in the city disappeared. The streets were empty. The buildings were quiet. We thought they had fled in panic. Vexthai's skin darkened again. We were wrong. They had not fled. They had gone underground. Underground? Mars is full of natural caves and tunnels. The humans had been expanding them for years, creating a maze beneath their city. When we landed, they simply moved their entire population into the underground. The old warrior stood and began pacing around the small room. General Morkith ordered us to search the tunnels. He said it would take a few days to find all the humans and make them surrender. It took 3 months, and we never found them all. 3 months to clear some tunnels? You do not understand. These were not just tunnels. The humans had built an entire city underground. They had food, water, weapons, medical facilities, everything they needed to survive. And they knew every passage, every hiding place, every secret way through the maze. Vexthai stopped pacing and looked directly at Cathara. The human who led them was named Danny Harper. He was a military officer, a Marine colonel. But he did not fight like any soldier we had ever faced. How did he fight? Like a ghost. Harper and his people would appear suddenly, attack our patrols, then vanish again. We would send a squad of soldiers into the tunnels, and they would never come back. We would find their equipment scattered in empty passages, but no bodies, no sign of what happened to them. The young historian leaned forward. This was unlike any military campaign she had studied. Did you not have superior weapons and armor? Yes, but they were useless in the tunnels. Our soldiers were trained to fight in open spaces with room to maneuver. In the narrow underground passages, we could not use our formation tactics. We had to move single file, which made us easy targets for ambush. Vexthai sat down again and continued his story. The worst part was the humans who helped Harper. They were not all soldiers. Many were just ordinary people who lived on Mars. Farmers, engineers, teachers, even children. Children fought in the war? A girl named Amy Chun was only 17 years old. She became one of the most dangerous snipers in the tunnels. Amy could hit a target from 300 meters away in near total darkness. She was responsible for killing more than 30 of our soldiers. Kiara found this hard to believe. How could a child be so effective? Because she was not fighting for glory or conquest. She was fighting for her home. Amy had lived on Mars her entire life. She knew every tunnel, every hiding spot, every way to move through the underground without being seen. What about the other humans you mentioned? There was a medic named Betty Walsh. She was older, maybe 50 years old. Betty would treat wounded humans and help them get back to the fight. But she also did something else. Vexthai paused, his expression growing darker. Betty would sometimes treat our wounded soldiers, too. She would give them medical care, make them feel safe, even talk to them about their families back home. Then, she would gather information about our plans and troop movements. She was a spy. She was a healer and a spy and a killer, all at the same time. Betty saved lives and took lives, sometimes in the same day. We could never predict what she would do, because she could be completely different people depending on what the situation required. The old commander walked to the cabinet and pulled out another data pad. This one showed maps of the Martian underground, marked with battle sites and troop movements. The tunnels became a nightmare for our forces. We would enter at one point and exit somewhere completely different. Sometimes our own soldiers would get lost and wander for days before finding their way out. How did the humans navigate so easily? They had lived there for years and had mapped every passage. But more than that, they had something we did not. Expect. A human named Nick Turner was a scientist who studied alien biology. He used his knowledge to create psychological weapons. Psychological weapons? Turner had studied our people and learned how our minds work. He created sounds and lights that would confuse us, make us panic, even drive some soldiers insane. Our troops would enter a tunnel and hear the voices of their dead comrades calling to them. They would see lights that led them deeper into the maze, farther from their units. Vexthai activated the data pad. It showed a three-dimensional map of the tunnel system. The passages twisted and curved in impossible ways, forming a maze that seemed to have no end. The humans turned the entire underground into a weapon. They would flood certain passages with gas that was harmless to them, but made us sick. They would create false walls that looked solid, but collapsed when we tried to lean against them. They even trained the local animals to attack us. Mars has animals? The humans brought rats with them from Earth, small creatures that lived in the tunnels and knew their way around. Turner somehow trained these rats to chew through our equipment cables and communication wires. Cathara stared at the complex map. How did the siege finally end? With the humans doing something that shocked even us. They began destroying their own city, destroying it. The domes that protected the surface city required constant maintenance. The humans began sabotaging their own life support systems. They were willing to make Mars uninhabitable for everyone rather than let us control it. Vexthai touched the map, and it changed to show the final days of the siege. Red areas marked where the protective domes had failed, exposing the city to the deadly Martian atmosphere. Colonel Harper sent us a message. He said Mars would become a dead world in 7 days, unless we left immediately. We thought he was bluffing. Was he? No. A human named Roy Fisher was in charge of the final evacuation. He made sure every human civilian escaped in the last transport ships. Then he began shutting down the terraforming equipment that made the planet livable. The old warrior stood and walked to the window one more time. We had a choice. Stay and try to capture a dead world, or leave and let the humans destroy their own colony. General Morkith chose to withdraw. So you lost Mars as well? We lost more than Mars. We lost our confidence. The humans had shown us that they would rather destroy everything they had built than submit to conquest. What kind of enemy destroys their own home to deny it to you? Vexthai turned back to face the young historian. After Mars, we knew we were not fighting a normal war. We were fighting people who valued freedom more than life itself. That made them more dangerous than any weapon we had ever faced. The recording. Device continued to capture every word as the old veteran prepared to tell the story of the battle that would change everything. Outside, the peaceful night held no hint of the terrors that war could bring to any world, anywhere in the galaxy. Vexthai's voice became quieter as he began the next part of his story. The room seemed colder now, and shadows from the window made strange patterns on the walls. Cathara could tell this part was harder for him to remember. After Mars, hi. Command was angry. They said we were making the humans look stronger than they really were. They sent the first battle fleet to join us. Admiral Zektar took command of the entire operation. Did having more ships help? At first, yes. We had over 400 vessels now, the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. Admiral Zektar said, we would attack the human mining stations around Jupiter. He thought if we controlled their fuel supply, they would have to surrender. Vexthai pulled out another data pad and showed Cathara a map of the Jupiter system. Dozens of small stations orbited the giant planet, harvesting hydrogen from its atmosphere. The stations looked defenseless. Just industrial platforms with minimal weapons. Intelligence reports said maybe 10,000 humans worked there. It should have been an easy victory, but it was not. No, the humans had learned from our previous attacks. They knew we were coming. When our fleet arrived at Jupiter, we found something we did not expect. The old warrior activated a hologram showing the Jupiter system. The gas giant dominated the display, its great red spot clearly visible. Around it, small dots marked this. Mining platforms. The human commander was named Grace Liu. She controlled the biggest platform, called New Horizon. When we demanded surrender, she sent back a strange message. What did she say? She said, come closer and find out what we built. For you. We thought she was trying to scare us with empty threats. Vexthai touched the hologram, and it zoomed in on the mining platforms. They looked ordinary, just metal structures with docking bays and processing equipment. Admiral Zektar ordered a standard attack. We would destroy the platforms one by one, then occupy the survivors. But when our ships got within weapons range, the humans showed us their surprise. The hologram began to move, showing Zephyrian ships approaching the platforms. As they came closer, the mining stations began to change shape. They had turned the entire industrial complex into a fortress. What looked like fuel tanks were actually weapons. What looked like mining equipment were actually guns. The whole system was a trap. The humans had been preparing for months, years. Grace Liu had been converting the mining platforms ever since the war began. A man named Tony Rodriguez figured out how to weaponize the hydrogen extractors. Instead of collecting fuel, they could fire concentrated hydrogen beams that could cut through our ship armor. The hologram showed the battle that followed. Bright beams reached out from the platforms toward the approaching Zephyrian fleet. Several ships were cut in half before they could return fire. But the real surprise came from the gas giant itself. The humans had figured out how to use Jupiter as a weapon. Cathara leaned forward. How do you use a planet as a weapon? Captain Steve Morgan was a pilot who flew supply runs between the platforms. He discovered that our ships could not track targets properly in Jupiter's storms. The magnetic fields and electrical activity confused our sensors. Vexthai manipulated the hologram to show small human ships diving into the upper atmosphere of Jupiter. They disappeared into the swirling clouds and storms. Morgan led a squadron of fighters into the great red spot itself, a storm larger than most planets, with winds that could tear apart any ship. But somehow the humans learned to fly in it. That is impossible. No pilot could navigate in those conditions. That is what we thought, but a human named Lucy Adams proved us wrong. She flew her fighter through the heart of the storm and came out behind our battle line. Then she attacked our command ship. The hologram showed a single small ship emerging from the red storm clouds. It moved erratically, buffeted by the violent winds, but somehow stayed in control. Adams hit our flagship with a missile that disabled our main computer. Suddenly, Admiral Zektar could not coordinate the fleet. Each ship was fighting alone against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. The humans were using the storm as cover, more than cover. They were using it as a highway. The storms on Jupiter connect to each other through the atmosphere. The humans had mapped these connections and learned to travel through them. Vexthai stood and began pacing again. The memory was clearly painful for him. While we were trying to fight the fighters, the mining platforms kept attacking. But they were not trying to destroy our ships. What were they trying to do? Carl Johnson was an engineer on New Horizon. He had been studying our technology and found a way to hack into our communication systems. Not with better computers, but with persistence and creativity. He broke your codes? He did not need to break them. Johnson found a way to send false messages that looked like they came from our own command. Our ships began receiving contradictory orders. Some were told to attack, others to retreat. The fleet formation fell apart. The hologram showed the chaos that followed. Zephyrian ships were flying in different directions, some firing at the platforms, others trying to regroup, a few actually attacking each other by mistake. Admiral Zeptar realized we were losing control of the battle. He ordered all ships to fall back and regroup outside the Jupiter system. But Grace Liu was not finished with us. What did she do? She activated something Johnson had built, a device that could destabilize the hydrogen collection process. If it worked, the explosion would destroy both fleets and most of Jupiter's moons. Cathara stared at the hologram in shock. She threatened to blow up the entire system? Yes. Johnson had turned the mining platforms into the largest bomb in galactic history. Grace Liu sent us a message saying we had 10 minutes to leave before she detonated it. But she would die too. That was the point. The humans were willing to sacrifice themselves and their most valuable industrial complex to stop us. We had no choice but to retreat. Vexthai sat down heavily. The hologram continued to show the mining platforms, now revealed as massive weapons capable of destroying everything in the system. As we withdrew, Grace Liu sent one final message. She said the humans were done playing defense. From now on, they would take the war to us. What did that mean? We found out soon enough. While we had been attacking their colonies, the humans had been building ships. Not just defensive vessels, but attack fleets designed to hunt us. The old warrior turned off the hologram and put the data pad away. The Battle of Jupiter was the turning point. We realized the humans were not just defending their worlds. They were preparing to invade ours. How could they build ships so quickly? Because they had something we never expected. The humans could adapt their entire civilization to support the war effort. Every factory, every engineer, every resource was turned toward building weapons. Vexthai walked to the window one more time. The stars looked different now, not peaceful, but threatening. Somewhere out there, human ships were still patrolling, still protecting their freedom. After Jupiter, we knew the war was lost. We just did not know how to end it. The humans had shown us they could turn anything into a weapon. Mining equipment, storms, even their own industrial capacity. They fought with their whole civilization, not just their military. What happened next? The humans kept their promise. They brought the war to us. And we learned that fighting in our own systems was much harder than attacking theirs. Cathara looked at her recording device. The storage was almost full, but she needed to hear the rest. The final part of the story would explain how the mighty Zephyrian Empire had been forced to make peace with a single planet. Tell me about the end, she said softly. Vexthai nodded. Outside, the colony slept peacefully, protected by the wisdom learned from 50 years of peace. But the old warrior remembered when peace was just a dream, and war seemed like it would never end. Vexthai sat in silence for a long moment. The final part of his story was the hardest to tell. It was about defeat, but also about something more complicated. It was about learning to respect an enemy who had taught them what freedom really meant. The end did not come with a great battle, he began slowly. It came with understanding. After Jupiter, both sides were tired. We had lost thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. The humans had lost entire colonies and most of their industrial capacity. Kethera waited patiently. She could see the pain in the old warrior's crystalline features. How long did the fighting continue? 2 more years. But they were different from the first battles. The humans had built new ships, fast attack vessels that could strike our supply lines and disappear before we could respond. They never tried to conquer our worlds. They just wanted to make the war too expensive for us to continue. Vex Thai stood and walked to his cabinet one more time. He pulled out a small, worn object that looked like it was made of human metal. This is from a human ship called the Freedom's Edge. Captain Rick Barnes commanded it. Did you fight against him? No. He saved my life. The old commander sat down and held the metal piece carefully in his scarred hands. My ship was damaged in a battle near the Centauri system. We were drifting, our engines dead, life support failing. A human patrol found us. They attacked? They could have. We were helpless. But Captain Barnes sent a message asking if we needed help. I thought it was a trick. No enemy offers to help soldiers who are trying to kill them just ours. Before, Kethera frowned. This made no sense to her. Why would humans help their enemies? That is what I asked Barnes when he came aboard my ship. He brought medical supplies and a repair team. While his people fixed our engines, I demanded to know why he was helping us. Vex Thai's skin began to glow softly, a sign of deep emotion. Barnes said something I will never forget. He said war was about fighting for what you believe in, not about hating the people you fight against. He said humans fought us because we tried to take their freedom, not because we were evil. That seems very strange. It was strange to us, too. We had been taught that enemies were enemies forever, but the humans saw it differently. They could fight us in battle and still treat us with respect when the fighting stopped. The old warrior set the metal piece on the table between them. Barnes and his crew spent 3 days repairing my ship. During that time, I talked with many humans. A doctor named Helen Burke treated my wounded soldiers. She had lost her brother in the first battle at Earth, but she still worked to save. Zephyrian lives. Was she not angry about her brother? She was sad, but not angry at us personally. Helen said her brother died fighting for something he believed in. She said she could respect Zephyrian soldiers who were also fighting for their beliefs, even if those beliefs were wrong. Vex Thai picked up the metal piece again and turned it over in his hands. The human who made the biggest impression on me was an engineer named Kevin Price. He had lost his entire family when we bombed Europa Station. His wife, his children, everyone he loved was dead because of the war. He must have hated you. I thought so too. But Kevin spent hours talking with my engineering crew, sharing technical knowledge and helping them understand human repair techniques. When I asked him why, he said hatred would not bring his family back, but maybe understanding could prevent other families from dying. Kethera was beginning to understand something important. The humans were not like other species you had conquered. No. Most species fought until they were defeated and accepted Zephyrian rule. The humans fought until they won and offered friendship to their former enemies. It was completely backwards from everything we knew about war. Vex Thai stood and walked to the window. The peaceful colony outside was a testament to the wisdom of that human approach. After my ship was repaired, Captain Barnes gave me this piece of metal. He said it was from his ship's hull, damaged in battle, but still strong. He said it was a reminder that broken things could be fixed if both sides were willing to work together. What happened when you returned to your fleet? I told Admiral Zektar about the humans who had helped us. He said they were trying to make use weak with kindness. But other ship commanders reported similar encounters. Human rescue ships helping damaged Zephyrian vessels. Human doctors treating our wounded. Human engineers sharing knowledge that could save lives. The old warrior turned back to face Cathara. The war was becoming something neither side wanted. We were fighting people who would risk their lives to save us, and they were fighting people who they thought could be reasoned with. It made no sense. How did it finally end? With a conversation. Helen Burke, the doctor I mentioned, had become a diplomat. She contacted Admiral Zektar directly and asked for a meeting. Not to discuss surrender, but to talk about why the war was happening. Vexthai sat down again and activated his datapad one more time. It showed a simple room with two figures sitting across from each other. The meeting took place on a neutral space station. Just Helen Burke and our negotiator, Peacekeep Morven. What did they discuss? Burke asked a simple question. She wanted to know what the Zephyrian Empire hoped to gain from conquering Earth. Morven gave the standard answer about expanding our territory and adding human resources to our empire. What did the humans say to that? She asked another question. She wanted to know if we had considered simply asking for what we needed. Burke said humans were willing to trade, to share technology, to work together on common problems. She said conquest was not necessary if cooperation was possible. The hologram showed the two diplomats talking quietly. Their body language suggested careful, respectful conversation rather than hostile negotiation. Morven was surprised. No species had ever offered cooperation instead of surrender. Burke explained that humans valued independence, but they also valued friendship. She said we could have everything we wanted from humanity without taking anything by force. Did your people believe her? Some did. Others thought it was another human trick. But Burke made an offer that changed everything. She said if we ended the war and left human space, Earth would provide medical aid to all our wounded soldiers. Both human and Zephyrian casualties would be treated equally. Vexthai's skin glowed brighter. That offer showed us something important. The humans were not trying to defeat us. They were trying to heal everyone the war had hurt. So the war ended with a treaty. Yes, but not the kind we expected. The humans did not demand territory or reparations. They only wanted a promise that we would leave them alone. In return, they offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and joint scientific research. The old commander turned off the hologram and put away the datapad. 50 years later, the relationship between our peoples is stronger than many alliances. Within the Zephyrian Empire itself, what did the war teach you about humans? Vexthai picked up the piece of metal from Captain Barnes one more time. It taught us that some things cannot be conquered because they become stronger when you try to break them. Human freedom was like that. The harder we fought against it, the more powerful it became. And what did it teach about war itself? That the best way to end a war is to remember that your enemies are people too. The humans never forgot we were people, even when we forgot they were. Vexthai stood and handed the metal piece to Cathara. This belongs in the archives now. Future generations should remember that strength is not always about winning. Sometimes it is about knowing when to stop fighting and start talking. The young historian held the small piece of human metal carefully. It was warm and surprisingly light. What would you tell young Zephyrians who might face humans in the future? I would tell them to listen more than they speak, to learn more than they teach, and to remember that humans will fight for their freedom until the stars burn out, but they will also share that freedom with anyone who asks for it honestly. The recording device finally stopped humming. The interview was complete. Outside, the first light of dawn was beginning to show over the peaceful colony. Somewhere among those distant stars, humans and Zephyrians worked together, exploring this galaxy as friends rather than enemies. The war was over. The lessons would last forever.